This is the podcast overview for week 11. We will be covering chapter 10, which is all about self-regulation, and this week specifically cognitive and behavioral approaches to self-regulation. So the first thing to do would be to check out the objectives for chapter 10 below. This is from your Harrington text, and you can listen to my overview of these objectives, which is really helpful because I like to point out specifics about these and kind of what to focus on. So this is like your study guide that you can use for the exams. Then next you want to go ahead and read chapter 10 and have the lecture slides next to you when you read the chapter, kind of as a guideline and to see what to focus in on and zone in on. Then you're going to also read a chapter of the McGonagall book this week. We took a break last week. Now we're back into it. We've been doing the McGonagall book every other week. So we'll be using chapter 4, which is Engage, How Anxiety Helps You to Rise to the Challenge. And this is actually part of a new section in the book, part 2, which is all about transforming your stress. So all the chapters in part 2 are going to deal with different tactics and strategies for turning around your stress and making your stress work for you. So you want to start on page 89. That's where part 2 starts, and read through chapter 4. And so that is the Upside of Stress, the McGonagall book. So you've got the two readings. You've got the chapter in the main text, and then you've got the chapter in the Upside of Stress. Once you've done that, I would highly recommend rewatching the TED Talk from Dr. McGonagall, just as a refresher. We're going to be getting into this new section of her book on transforming stress, and so it might be good to kind of re-listen to some of those strategies she talks about, as well as a lot of the research that she mentions. Then your discussion for this week is using both books, chapter 10 of Harrington and chapter 4 of the McGonagall book. The first exercise is to complete the Insight exercise 10.1 on page 304. It's about coping strategies, so it's a little assessment used to look at what your coping strategy is. And then I want you to additionally state, have you used any of the coping strategies listed on pages 309 to 310? So what you're doing in the assessment is it's asking you to think about your stress in the past month. What has stressed you out? What has caused you some anxiety maybe? And then you're going to find what your overall coping strategy is, kind of like your umbrella strategy, and then narrow it down and get more specific with various types of things you do when you're stressed. And so you're just really explaining that a little bit. And then talking about, how effective do you feel those coping strategies were? How much control did you have over the stressor, the thing that stressed you out in this past month? And did your results fit with the goodness of fit hypothesis, which is discussed in chapter 10? So that'll help you kind of refresh what that means, but also understand why this hypothesis is important in matching your coping strategies to what your capabilities are. Number 2 asks you to think about dispositional optimists, which is talked about in the book. And they're more inclined to use approach coping and disinclined to use avoidance coping strategies. Why do you think that's so? And in what ways could this pattern of coping account for the positive health and well-being benefits that are associated with dispositional optimism? Third, do you share your thoughts, your personal thoughts and feelings with others on social media sites? If you do you experience any therapeutic benefits, such as positive feelings from that self-expression, and why do you think so? If you don't, How do you think some people might benefit from this type of sharing of self-expression? So it's a good way to intersperse a little bit of social media in there because it is so widely used and oftentimes used as a coping mechanism for many people. And then lastly, you're going to turn to the McGonigal book and answer the question, how can people rethink their stress to turn nerves into excitement and a threat into a challenge? I'd like you to give me some examples there, perhaps from your own life in times where you could have done this or you did do this. What might that have been for you? Okay, so that's a good way to tie in her chapter there to what we're talking about this week. And then that pretty much sums up week 11 content. If you have any questions or concerns or comments or need some clarification, please or we can Zoom chat, whichever works for you.